In 1870, Phoenix was nothing. Not a small town, not a struggling settlement, nothing. A few adobe huts scattered across empty desert, some freshly dug ditches cutting through hard-pan soil, and maybe 200 people crazy enough to believe they could build a city where no city belonged. By 1970, Phoenix had become one of the fastest-growing metropolitan areas in America, sprawling across the valley floor toward mountains in every direction, home to over 500,000 people living in air-conditioned suburbs that covered what used to be raw Sonoran desert. Using AI reconstruction, you're about to watch Phoenix rise from absolute emptiness to a sunbelt giant that redefined what a desert city could be. If you enjoy this kind of historical content, consider subscribing. The first irrigation canal cuts through virgin desert in 1867. This view shows the moment Phoenix begins to exist. Jack Swilling stands somewhere along this rough channel with his crew, following the ghost lines of ancient Hohokam canals that collapsed centuries before any white settler arrived. The men aren't thinking about archaeology or history, they're thinking about survival. The Salt River flows about 10 miles north, and if they can redirect that water here, they can turn this wasteland into farmland. The work is absolutely brutal. Digging by hand in temperatures that hit 110 degrees by mid-morning, moving thousands of tons of desert hardpan with nothing but shovels, pickaxes and mule-drawn scrapers. The men work dawn to dusk, sleeping in canvas tents, eating beans and salt pork, drinking water that tastes like mud. Dozens quit, some die from heat stroke or accidents. But the canal gets built. Water flows. And within months, the first wheat and barley crops push through soil that hasn't seen agriculture in 500 years. This rough ditch doesn't look like the foundation of a major American city, but it's the only reason Phoenix exists at all. The town site sprawls across empty desert in 1870. You're looking at maybe 20 structures total, most of them single-room adobes with dirt floors and canvas roofs. There's no plan, no grid, no city layout, just buildings wherever someone decided to stake a claim and start farming. The population is perhaps 200 souls. Farmers mostly, plus the merchants who sell them seed and tools, the saloon keepers who sell them whiskey, and the prostitutes who work the handful of establishments that can barely be called businesses. Dust coats everything, fine and brown and inescapable. The summer heat drives people indoors by 10 am and keeps them there until sunset. Water comes from canals that sometimes run dry when the Salt River drops, and the nearest railroad is 300 miles away in California, meaning everything has to come by wagon over roads that turn to axle-deep mud when it rains and choking dust when it doesn't. Phoenix is completely isolated, weeks away from civilization by any measure. Disease spreads fast in close quarters. Typhoid, dysentery, and smallpox kill regularly. There's no doctor, no law enforcement worth mentioning, and no reason to believe this collection of mud huts will survive 5 years. But someone's already calling it a town, already acting like this place has a future. That irrational confidence matters more than the miserable reality. The Phoenix Herald building stands on Washington Street in 1873. This modest 2-story brick structure represents something almost absurd. A daily newspaper in a settlement that barely has 1,500 people, most of whom can't read. The men standing outside the entrance aren't posing for posterity. They're pressmen and typesetters on an ordinary afternoon, taking a break from the noise and heat of the printing room. But their presence tells you everything about early Phoenix. Someone invested serious money in a printing press, in daily editions, in the idea that news and information matter even in the middle of the desert. The building itself shows real ambition. Actual fired brick, not sun-dried adobe. Proper windows with glass, not just open holes with shutters. A painted sign announcing the business. This is permanent construction meant to last decades, not temporary shelter meant to survive one summer. The street is still dirt, rutted from wagon wheels, turning to sticky mud when the monsoon rains come and choking dust the rest of the year. But the buildings going up around the Herald office are substantial. 2 and 3 stories, solid stone foundations, businesses that expect to be here in 1880 and 1890. Phoenix isn't just gambling on survival anymore, it's building like it already won the bet. By 1885, Phoenix has a grid. You're looking at one of those promotional bird's-eye lithographs commissioned to attract Eastern investors and potential settlers, but unlike most frontier town propaganda, the reality actually matches the image. Those aren't aspirational farms drawn to fill empty space. They're real fields, hundreds of them, spreading across the Salt River Valley in neat rectangles, all of them fed by an irrigation system that now covers over 400 miles of canals and laterals. This is what Phoenix truly is at its core. Not a mining town like Tombstone, not a railroad hub like Tucson, an agricultural colony built entirely on redirected water and the engineering legacy of a civilization that died out 400 years earlier. The mountains frame everything. The McDowell Range to the northeast, Camelback to the north, South Mountain to the south, all of them sharp and close and absolutely unforgiving. The farms stretch toward them in every direction. Green squares against brown desert, an artificial landscape that shouldn't exist. The vignettes around the border of the lithograph show schools, churches, a courthouse, a business district, all the infrastructure of a permanent American settlement. Phoenix has 2,500 people now, plus another few thousand scattered across the surrounding farming communities. It has a volunteer fire department that's only moderately effective, a marshal who keeps order most of the time, and politicians who are already scheming to steal the territorial capital away from Prescott. Phoenix isn't hoping for a future anymore, it's actively constructing one. Central Avenue runs straight through downtown Phoenix in 1889, and you can see the entire city from this rooftop vantage point. The street is graded dirt, wide enough for 2 freight wagons to pass each other, bordered by wooden sidewalks that keep pedestrians above the mud and dust. Those buildings lining the avenue are getting serious now. 3, 4, even 5 stories, brick and stone construction, built by merchants and investors risking actual capital on Phoenix's permanence. The city just became Arizona's territorial capital, winning a vicious political fight against Prescott and Tucson that involved legislative bribes, newspaper propaganda, and backroom deals that would make modern lobbyists blush. That victory changes everything. Territorial government workers need housing. Lawyers and lobbyists need hotels and office space. Land speculators need banks. Phoenix has 3,100 people now, and the capital designation absolutely guarantees it will keep growing. Look at that ornate corner building on the left, the one with decorative cornices and tall windows. Someone invested thousands of dollars in that structure, betting that Phoenix has genuine staying power. The streetcar tracks run down the middle of Central Avenue, connecting downtown to the residential neighborhoods spreading north and south. Those tracks matter enormously. They prove Phoenix is modern, that it's thinking beyond horses and wagons, that it's planning for a future with tens of thousands of residents. The Arizona Territorial Fair brings crowds to Phoenix in 1897. Washington Street fills with ranchers in wide-brimmed hats, farmers in work clothes, territorial officials in suits, and townspeople celebrating 27 years of Phoenix history like it's ancient civilization. Look at them dressed as cowboys and pioneers, romanticizing the Old West when most of these spectators probably lived through the actual Old West just a decade earlier. The frontier is already nostalgia, already something to perform and package for entertainment. But the buildings behind the crowds tell a different story. They're substantial commercial blocks now, 2 and 3 stories with pressed tin ceilings, plate glass storefronts, canvas awnings to block the relentless sun. Phoenix has 5,500 people. It has electric streetlights on major avenues, though most homes still use kerosene lamps. It has a telephone exchange connecting maybe 100 subscribers. It has a volunteer fire department with actual equipment, though fires still destroy entire blocks when the wind picks up. The town has 3 newspapers competing for readers, a high school graduating maybe 20 students per year, and more saloons than churches, which tells you something about frontier priorities. This isn't a struggling settlement anymore. This is a confident city already starting to mythologize the hardship days it barely survived. Washington Street thrums with commercial energy in 1920. The sidewalks are packed with shoppers, the street is jammed with automobiles and delivery trucks, and every storefront seems to be conducting actual business. The Corix sign hangs above a department store that's been serving Phoenix since territorial days. now occupying an entire building with multiple floors of merchandise. Theatre marquees advertise both films and live vaudeville shows. People crowd under awnings and in doorways, escaping sun that still climbs to 115 degrees in summer, though now some of the bigger buildings have primitive air conditioning systems that make indoor spaces almost bearable. You go to the movies as much for the refrigerated air as the entertainment. Phoenix has 29,000 people now. Statehood came in 1912 after decades of waiting, and the city is aggressively competing with Tucson to dominate Arizona's economy. The buildings are getting genuinely tall, 4 and 5 stories, some with elevator service. Money flows through these businesses. Real estate sells constantly. New subdivisions spread north toward the McDowell Mountains and south toward Tempe. Even prohibition, which turns half the bar owners into criminals overnight, doesn't slow the growth. Bootleggers and speakeasies operate openly enough that everyone knows where to find them. The city keeps expanding, keeps believing in itself, keeps acting like the desert heat and isolation are minor inconveniences rather than existential threats. Phoenix finally has a skyline in 1931. It's modest, just a handful of buildings rising above the low desert sprawl, but they're genuine high rises, the kind of structures you'd see in Los Angeles or San Francisco. The tallest is the Luers Tower, finished in 1929 right as the stock market collapsed. 14 stories of tan brick and Art Deco ambition that still defines Phoenix's silhouette. From this aerial view, you can see how compact the city still is. Downtown forms a tight cluster of taller buildings surrounded by residential neighborhoods that spread toward the mountains in neat grids. Phoenix has 48,000 people, and despite the depression grinding the national economy into dust, the city somehow keeps growing. While Detroit and Pittsburgh watch their populations shrink and factories close, Phoenix attracts people fleeing the industrial collapse. The warm winters cost nothing. The land is cheap. The irrigation canals still feed cotton and citrus farms that ring the city, generating agricultural income that doesn't depend on factory orders. Phoenix isn't immune to the depression, unemployment hits hard and breadlines form, but the city's economy isn't tied to manufacturing, so it doesn't crater the way Rust Belt cities do. The sun keeps shining, the water keeps flowing through those hand-dug canals, and people keep arriving with nothing, hoping Phoenix offers something better than wherever they came from. The Phoenix Union stockyards sprawl across the desert floor in 1941 like a city within a city. Those dark masses are cattle, thousands of them, organized into pens that follow their own brutal grid system. The railroad tracks curve directly through the facility because this entire operation exists to move livestock from Arizona ranches to California slaughterhouses and markets. Phoenix is still fundamentally an agricultural economy. Cotton, citrus, alfalfa, and cattle. The stockyards process animals from ranches across the territory, holding them in these pens until there's enough to fill a train. It's dusty, loud, and completely unglamorous work. The smell carries for miles when the wind shifts. Cowboys drive cattle through city streets to reach the yards. The bellowing of thousands of animals waiting to be shipped creates a constant background noise. But the operation employs hundreds of workers and generates serious money for Phoenix's economy. The farmland sits right next to the yards, which seems insane by modern standards but makes perfect sense in 1941. The city hasn't consumed the surrounding agricultural land yet. Production and processing happen side by side, and nobody questions it. World War II changes everything permanently. Military bases open in the desert surrounding Phoenix, bringing tens of thousands of service members who experience Arizona winter and remember it when the war ends. By 1955, the city has 220,000 people, and they're spreading across the valley faster than city planners can keep up. You're looking at brand new suburban developments, endless rows of single-family ranch homes on quarter-acre lots, each one with a bright green lawn that absolutely shouldn't exist in the Sonoran Desert. The grass stays green because water is still absurdly cheap and nobody's even thinking about conservation. Every house has a concrete driveway, a carport or attached garage, and a swamp cooler or refrigerated air conditioning unit that makes July survivable. The streets curve and wind instead of following the rigid downtown grid. This is post-war suburban planning designed entirely around automobiles and families who want maximum space between themselves and their neighbors. Phoenix has become the prototype for Sunbelt sprawl. The houses are affordable, mass-produced, almost identical. The weather is perfect from October through April, and there's always more desert to bulldoze and pave. Air conditioning makes it all possible. Without it, nobody lives here in summer. With it, Phoenix becomes the fastest growing city in America. By 1970, Phoenix has absolutely exploded. Downtown sits small and almost insignificant in this aerial frame, a tight cluster of high rises surrounded by an ocean of suburban development that stretches towards South Mountain in every direction. The city has 580,000 people, and you can see where every single one of them lives from this one photograph. Subdivisions fill the valley floor in relentless geometric waves. Some neighborhoods are mature with trees and established landscaping. Others are brand new, raw dirt with houses under construction and streets still being paved. And beyond those, you can see the next developments already platted and graded, waiting for the builders to arrive. Phoenix is adding 20,000 people every single year. The sprawl is functionally unlimited. There's no ocean-stopping expansion, no mountains blocking development, just flat valley floor that's cheap to grade and build on. The city that started as 20 adobe huts around a hand-dug irrigation canal has become a metropolitan area that completely redefined what a desert city could be. What's genuinely remarkable is how compressed the timeline is. One human lifetime separates the Phoenix of 1870 from the Phoenix of 1970. From hand-dug canals to the interstate highway system. From adobe huts to air-conditioned suburbs. From 200 desperate farmers to 580,000 residents. The city that had no rational reason to exist became one of the largest in America by simply refusing to accept the limitations of its environment. If there's another frontier city or moment in Western expansion you'd like to see brought to life through AI reconstruction, let me know in the comments below. Again, thank you so much.